Furious world leaders are canceling their military contracts with the United States. They are canceling investments in the United States. They are blocking the United States from critical international meetings. Let's talk about what NATO is doing, for example. NATO has just announced that it will not be buying any more of the United States E-3 Century AWACS, those surveillance airplanes that were the crown jewel of the United States Air Force. You may recall that was one of the airplanes that was destroyed by Iran at the Saudi air base. Well, one of the big announcements by NATO as Donald Trump continues to attack NATO is they're going to be buying basically the European version of the E-3 Century AWACS, which is an airplane made by Saab in Sweden. And NATO is going to be bolstering its defense capabilities with a plane called the Swedish Saab Golden Eye, which is going to replace the 14 E-3 AWACS planes. This is a big deal, folks, because one of the things the United States was trying to do was, first the United States said they were going to be making this E-7 version of the E-3. Then they try to hold out with NATO and say, hang tight, we're going to be working through this new generation of the E-3. It may not be the E-7. And NATO, once Donald Trump just started relentlessly attacking, and NATO said, enough is enough, we ain't doing it. So here's the story, folks. NATO selects Swedish Saab Global Eye to replace the 14 E-3 AWACS planes. As Jim Scudo explains, this shift away from the U.S. are a product of the U.S. shift away from Europe and Donald Trump's constant attack of NATO. As this one account explains, for nearly 4 decades, NATO's eye in the sky were American planes. The Boeing E-3 Century, a militarized 707 with a rotating radar dish on top, has been the alliance's airborne early warning backbone since the 1980s. But the U.S. said they were going to make this E-7. They delayed in that. They wanted NATO to hold out. Donald Trump starts saying, I'm going to retaliate against NATO because you didn't support the war crimes I was committing in Iran. NATO said, thank you, bye-bye. NATO's procurement division said, we will be ordering the Global Eye, which, by the way, it uses a fixed AESA radar rather than the E-3's rotating dish, enabling faster target detection across air and sea. Trump spent 14 months telling Europe to spend more on defense and rely less on America. And Europe saying, got your message, Donald. We're not going to be buying the E-3 Centuries. See you later. Now, it's something similar that we're seeing in Canada right now, where they're doing the F-35 review. Canada was supposed to buy these F-35s. It wasn't even really a question that they were going to buy these F-35s. Then Donald Trump starts attacking Canada, says we're going to make you the 51st state, all of these demeaning things. And Canada says, okay, well, now that you're attacking our sovereignty, also Donald Trump basically saying, why would I even renew CUSMA, the Canadian-United States-Mexico agreement? And Trump, imposed all of the tariffs on Canada. And then Donald Trump was saying, well, we could put kill switches in our F-35s and our military equipment. Also, when you get an F-35 or you get American military equipment, you then have to get all of the maintenance associated with it, and all of the spare parts come from the United States. And people saw, look what happened in Iran, where once you had some American parts, or if America gave you the THAAD systems or the Patriot systems, America would take it back, or they would say, oopsies, we don't have the parts. Instead, we're going to send it to the Middle East to help the United States. And, the United States was not a reliable partner. And so while lots of people will tell you the F-35 is a superior plane than the Saab Swedish version, it's called a Gripen. There are lots of Gripen fans out there from Sweden, but lots of people believe the F-35 is probably a superior plane. But in the long run, where you have to rely on the United States for spare parts and maintenance, and Trump's talking about kill switches, one of the things that Sweden has been offering is, look, don't do the F-35s, or maybe you could do some F-35s, but do other Gripens, and let's build it together. Let's build Gripen factories, Saab Gripen factories in Canada. We'll create lots of Canadian jobs, and you can be the masters of your destiny, Canada. Let's build a plane together. We can provide, the core, Gripen plane, model, and then maybe we can innovate together. And so in response to that, Lockheed, which makes the F-35s, they went to one of the big defense manufacturers in Canada, and they said, all right, well, I guess we got to run to Ottawa and we got to help make Canadian jobs. And so the F-35s, Lockheed is really sweating it, and they came up with the plan where they're going to basically offer all of these jobs jobs in Ottawa to try to compete with Sweden's griping. But the very fact that, even Canada's like, yeah, I don't think we're going to go with that, and we may go with the griping, just goes to tell you how no one wants to basically touch the United States, weapons anymore. And this is all a result of Donald Trump. I was just thinking about this big hearing in Cyprus that just took place, where you had all of these world leaders, you had NATO leaders, you had Ursula von der Leyen representing the European Union Commission, and I was just thinking about how they were all basically moving on from the United States. How you had that meeting earlier. You had a big meeting that was led by Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron about a week ago, bringing together 50 nations to try to figure out ways to either open up the Strait of Hormuz or figure out diplomatic solutions, while Donald Trump is out there, contradicting himself each day and posting, deranged social media posts. You have these broader alliances forming, and the U.S. ain't invited to these meetings. The U.S. wasn't at Cyprus. The U.S. wasn't at the meeting held by Starmer and Macron. And when Donald Trump, starts attacking NATO and says all of these things, NATO strikes back as well. I mean, you had Donald Trump, the Trump regime had this memorandum that was circulating. Elbridge Colby, the number 2 at the Department of Defense, prepared this memorandum about how can we retaliate against NATO countries, and the Trump regime figuring out how do we punish NATO countries, right? At the same time, the Trump regime has invited Vladimir Putin to the G20 in December in Miami at the Trump properties. The Trump regime is figuring out what best can we do in order to hurt NATO. As Phil Stewart at Reuters explains, Scoop, internal Pentagon emails detail options that the Trump regime is considering for how to punish NATO allies who the U.S. believes failed to support it in the Iran war operations. They're thinking about, should we suspend Spain from NATO? Can we take a new look at the Falklands and other European, quote, imperial possessions? We need to snatch European imperial possessions, is what the Trump regime is saying. And Reuters talked about this email, this email note that was prepared by Elbridge Colby, the Pentagon's top policy advisor, coming up with ways to attack NATO countries, to which NATO responded by saying, bet, we're not buying your E3 Century AWACS. We're going to buy the Global Eye from Saab.
If you're heading into summer without a medical emergency kit, you're taking a risk that most people don't think about until it's too late. Summer colds linger and can turn into sinus infections that last for weeks. Getting sick right before vacation can derail everything. And when you're traveling, finding a doctor and pharmacy is stressful. That's why I ordered a medical emergency kit. It's like having urgent care and a pharmacy right at home. It includes essential prescriptions like amoxicillin and generic Z-Pak to treat a wide range of common and serious illnesses. So if you wake up sick at home or on the road, you already have what you need. No waiting for your doctor, no hours at urgent care, no pharmacy lines, no copays. Just match your symptoms to the right prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Start on your meds sooner and feel better faster. Every home needs at least one medical emergency kit. Order yours online in minutes and it's shipped to your door. And save $45 with my promo code Meidas at urgentcarekit.com/Meidas. That's promo code Meidas at urgentcarekit.com/Meidas.
Also, NATO came out with a pretty strong statement. How dare you, NATO said, and there's no provision to expel members at all, so don't even think about it. NATO said, the alliance's founding treaty does not foresee any provision for suspension of NATO membership of Spain or other countries. You need to believe Donald Trump's like, hey, Putin, you should join the G20, and then we want to suspend members from NATO. Yes, it's Russia, 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 because Donald Trump is a Putin sycophant, obviously. I mean, what else can you describe of what's going on right now? And by the way, when a Pentagon press secretary, Kingsley Wilson, was confronted with the fact that this note punishing NATO members leaked, this is what Kingsley Wilson said on behalf of the Trump regime. Despite everything the U.S. has done for our NATO allies, they were not there for us. The War Department will ensure that the president has credible options to ensure that our allies are no longer a paper tiger and instead do their part. Yeah, they're not buying your damn weapons anymore. They're not inviting you to meetings anymore. America first means America alone right now, you idiots. You've destroyed the strong and soft power of the United States while Donald Trump is social media posting, ranting and raving like a lunatic. By the way, here's Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. Here's what he had to say. Play this clip.
Spain is a reliable partner within NATO, and we're fulfilling our obligations with NATO. We are deploying military capabilities and also soldiers at the eastern flank of Europe. So therefore, no worries at all. I would say that it would be important if European countries, European allies, we can share our thoughts and information before starting wars, as the one that we are now suffering in the Middle East, because this part of the world is close by Europe. And we need also to be aware and to have an opinion on this. From my point of view, this war is illegal, it's a big mistake, and I hope that in the near future we can face a de-escalation and, of course, a way out, thanks to diplomacy and not thanks to war.
And here's what French President Emmanuel Macron had to say when he was in Greece about how America is no longer a reliable ally or even an ally at all. This is from French President Emmanuel Macron's recent trip to Greece. I'm going to do a whole other video on this, but let's play this clip.
I think this very moment could be the European moment, and for several reasons. Number one, everybody in this world have a clear view that this is a world of disorder. Second, everybody sees that the number one power, the US, could be an ally for certain countries, but this ally is not so much certain. And nobody is totally sure if this ally is reliable.
Now, I was just watching this meeting in Cyprus. You see right here all the world leaders, Donald Trump not invited to this, America not there at all. And I was thinking about the news also about how Saudi Arabia keeps on canceling financial commitments in the United States, right? We learned about how the Live Golf Tournament, which is basically fully funded by the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, Saudi Arabia is like, yeah, we're only going to be focusing our money now on essential projects. And sorry, your Live Golf Tournament isn't essential. And so you hit Donald Trump where it hurts. You hit him with the golf league that the Saudis propped up. They giveth, they taketh away, they prop it up, they rip it apart, and now the whole Live Golf tournament's in jeopardy. In addition, as Mark Levine reports, Saudi Arabia just backed out of a deal to provide $200 million in much-needed funding to the Met Opera. The reason? Because of the war's impact on the Saudi economy. They are pulling back on funding commitments, anything they deem non-essential in the United States, Saudi snatching up and they ain't going to be paying. This is a terrible blow, Mark Levine says, to one of our nation's great cultural pillars. Although, may I push back, Mark, for a second and suggest that perhaps one of our nation's big cultural pillars should not be dependent on the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund? Maybe I'm going out on a limb here to say that they shouldn't be fully funded by the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund. But what do I know? People don't realize this, but those Middle East sovereign wealth funds funnel a lot of money to the United States. A lot of American corporations, private equity. I mean, setting aside, obviously, Jared Kushner, who's basically fully funded by Middle East countries while he's out there undermining American national security while negotiating on his behalf and Netanyahu's behalf, not on the United States' behalf, with Middle East nations undermining our security. Him and frickin' Witkoff, or they're worse. Don't even get me started there. But lots of our private equity firms here in the United States, lots of our, there's a lot of media companies, lots of mergers and acquisitions are funded by Saudi money and Middle East money that pours into the United States. Real estate propped up by that money. So much money used to come in. And now you're seeing a pullback, not just a pullback there, but a pullback from our bond market, from international buyers as well, saying, I don't know, America doesn't seem like a safe, stable place to put our money anymore. So we're seeing that. So we have all of these things going on at the same time. Also, you have Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk And he's been commenting that, the United States just isn't really an ally anymore. I mean, he came out with a very strong statement, Donald Tusk, saying, we can't rely on the United States for an ally. Did I show you the clip where French President Emmanuel Macron also said, he's echoing the words here of Prime Minister Donald Tusk. They both said this, which is basically Article 5 of NATO, which is the joint defense article. If one person gets attacked, all of NATO supports each other. That Donald Trump's basically destroyed Article 5 of NATO. Tusk said that in a recent article. And here's French President Emmanuel Macron saying it as well. Let's play this clip.
Everybody is spending more. And at the same time, there is now a doubt on the Article 5. Not put on the table by the Europeans, but by the US president. And it's clearly de facto weakening the strength of the alliance. I think NATO is very useful, first for interoperability, second because it was a very interoperability of our equipment, our armies and so on, and it is a source of efficiency. And because it's a good strategic alliance, very useful for all of us. But I'm a strong believer in the European pillar of NATO. I advocated that years ago. As your Prime Minister mentioned, we together pushed forward this agenda of strategic autonomy, and this is where we are. So my view is that we have to strengthen this European pillar. We should not be the one to weaken NATO. We have to preserve NATO and its interoperability, but the Europeans have to be much stronger and work together and launch together common operations. And what we are ready to do in the Baltic Sea.
Yeah, so there you have it, folks. I'm going to keep you posted every step of the way, but these are some big developments right here. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 7 million subscribers. You may think you're subscribed, but you may not actually be subscribed. Double check, hit subscribe. Let's do this.